If you like to make your NFL games a little bit more interesting, you've come to the right place. It's the Even Money Podcast with Ross Tucker and Steve Fezzik.
Yeah, Vegas, baby, Vegas. It is the Even Money Podcast. We are, of course, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Now I get a chance to call games for CBS on the TV side, both college and NFL, as well as NFL games for Westwood One National Radio, which is a blast. If you didn't already, check out Greg Cosell on yesterday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. We went through who he thought were like some of the more interesting moves in the first round of the NFL draft, and then some of the quarterbacks taken later. Of course, on the College Draft Podcast with Emory Hunt, at least this week, we spent a bunch of time talking about the Travis Hunter trade, which I'll get to with Steve momentarily, as well as going ahead and talking about the Shedeur Sanders situation. On Wednesday's Fantasy Feast, by the way, John Daigle and I will go over his prop bets. I don't think he did that well. We'll have to check it out on when we review the prop bets from last week on that Even Money Fantasy Feast simulcast. We'll review those with John on Wednesday's show. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL or us at Ross Tucker Pod. Appreciate and love those of you that check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, or just rate and review the show. It's a great way to get your email question answered by Steve right away. Take advantage of a sponsor that you hear on the show or rate and review the show. Just send it to me, Ross at RossTucker.com, so I can put you to the top of the line to ask questions of the great Steve Fezzik at Fezzik Sports on social media. All right, Steve, here's what I'm thinking about for today, okay? I kind of am curious, number one, to get your thoughts on teams that maybe you're giving an upgrade to or a downgrade to based on what they did in the draft. Number two, I know on social media you had some very strong opinions about some of the draft trades that were made. We will, of course, get into MLB and NBA because those are the sports that are going on right now, and people like to bet, and you'll give them some bets. You'll say some things that, you know, you are high on in terms of a bet that they can make this week. We try to have at least one best bet every week. So let's start with this. Is there, like, how much do the markets change based on the draft in your experience? Not even in your experience. Based on what happened in this year's draft, what was the impact on, like, the futures or season win totals or any of those?
There is no impact. The draft is just a largely media-driven, it's entertainment. But the draft is not irrelevant. Having draft capital, very significant. But the truth is, Ross, we just don't know how these players are going to pan out. So if you have, a second-round pick and you're picking third in the second round, that's worth a certain amount, and you have all the experts talking about teams that blew it, teams that reached, teams that made great value selections. Bottom line is the market shrugs it off, and maybe a guy went 33rd that should have gone 36th. It has an insignificant difference, and thus you don't see any movement in the season wins. Now, having said that, I do think it's time to start looking at certain teams and saying, well, wait a minute. Let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ross, where's their quarterback? Mason Rudolph. Will Howard isn't going to be their quarterback. Is Rodgers going to quarterback the Steelers? And if not, how the heck are they going to win 8.5 games?
Well, that would be my thing. Before we move on to some of the specific teams, okay? With what you said about the draft, can't you look at it though, Steve? Like, Steelers are actually a good example, right? They're going to sign Rodgers. There is no way. I am convinced that the reason why they didn't draft Shedeur Sanders is because Rodgers told them not to. Nobody will convince me otherwise. Rodgers did not want to have to deal with Shedeur Sanders being there. And if he had a bad game, people saying, put Sanders in, put Shedeur in. Rodgers probably told the Steelers, hey, guys, I'm just telling you, I'm not playing if you draft him. Or if you draft somebody in the first or second round that I got to look over my shoulder, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not doing that at this stage. So I would actually look at the Steelers and I would bet them. See, this is a good example. And I got a couple other teams to talk to you about. But I would look at the Steelers and I would grade them with the expectation, 99% in my mind, Rodgers is their quarterback. And so I don't know, like reasonable minds can disagree whether you go over or under based on that. But that's my read on the draft. And I got other teams where I got reads too, but that's my Steelers read. Would that affect you in any way?
Well, you're spot on. The markets agree with you because obviously the Steelers aren't going to be lined at 8.5 wins if Rudolph would be their quarterback. So the market is saying, hey, effectively it's a done deal. Rodgers is going to be the very likely quarterback for Pittsburgh. You know, I want to ask you, you bring up a great question. Let's talk Cleveland. Season win number, essentially 5, 4.5 vig to the over. Sanders, obviously, they got him super, super cheap. Maybe long-term it makes sense, but this year, is it going to be a circus in Cleveland? What's it going to be like, Ross?
Well, that is another fascinating one because if you look at what the Browns did, Steve, and we need to talk about this as well as relates to their trade with the Jaguars, their quarterback this year is going to be Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, or Shedeur Sanders, okay? They traded down 3 spots to get the Jags' first-round pick next year, and then some, a bunch of other picks, right? A bunch of draft capital. Steve, I would have thought coming into this year that their head coach and GM would be on the hot seat. There's no way those guys make that move, if they think they're on the hot seat. There's just no way that they would not do that. They would not get a first-round pick for somebody else next year, right? That doesn't make any sense. So they saw an opportunity. They saw an opportunity to capitalize. The Browns know, Steve, that they need a quarterback. They know. They're smart, right? So here's how I look at it. I think they took Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. I don't know that maybe for the first couple games, just to feel like the team and the veterans, just to make them think that they have a chance. Maybe for the first couple games, they would start Flacco or Kenny Pickett. But I got to tell you, Steve, I think the Browns looked at next year's draft class, realized it's going to be a lot better at quarterback. They can finally get rid of Watson, and they can draft their future guy next year. I think they looked at it like, let's buy a lot of chances at this, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan Gabriel starts half the games and Shedeur Sanders starts the other half the games. They figure out if either one of those guys can be the guy. If they're not, they draft the quarterback next year. Hey, maybe one of those guys is awesome. And then they have all this first-round pick to build around this great third-round pick or this great fifth-round pick. But my point to you is they don't make those moves unless they're confident they're going to be there in 2026 and that they can get a quarterback in 2026. I think Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders start a bunch of games for the Browns. I now like the Browns. Where are they lined right now?
Well, they're lined at 4.5 wins over minus 160. We're not going under 4.5, but you bring up a great point. Let's talk about how to get at it. We don't want to fade the Browns when Flacco or Pickett, well, maybe Pickett, but not when Flacco's starting. We want to fade the Browns week 14, so let's wait for these games of the year to come out and look towards the back end as Cleveland being a team that no NFL team intentionally loses. But like you said, they'll see what they have at quarterback. And good luck with Dylan Gabriel, a guy that once was quoted, I believe, as loving the warm weather when he played in Southern California in the Rose Bowl. Well, Not so much of that's going to happen in Cleveland come December, right?
Well, the Browns obviously like him. Curious, while we're on that, Steve, before we move on to some of his other stuff, what did you think of that trade between the Jags and the Browns? I know you're not like a GM. I know you're not like, you don't sit there and you evaluate trades, but I did see you on social media at Fezzik Sports have a very, very strong opinion about that trade. Why?
Because whenever you trade up in the draft, you have to pay a king's ransom to move up, way more than you should. So when you think about it, a first round pick next year is worth almost as much as a first round pick this year, if you're talking about, where you're going to go, but yet it gets discounted so severely. And look at what happened with Jacksonville just to go ahead and move up to number 2. And I get it, Travis Hunter, tremendously talented individual, but he can't catch the ball and defend the pass at the same time effectively. It's very difficult to master one task, much less 2. And I just don't think it's going to be viable. But that's just my opinion. But the bottom line is you mortgage your future. Hey, this makes Jacksonville better this year. But long term, I don't think there's anyone that would say, hey, I expect Jacksonville to be a better team 2 years from now from this trade. And so it's just curious that the owners allow their GMs to do whatever they want. If I was an owner, I'd be like the Patriots. I'd be like, hey, we're in it for the long haul. We want to be the best team we can be over the next 10 years. We don't want to be slightly better this year, so I can't understand it.
So here's a question, Steve. Based on this move by the Jaguars, it seems pretty clear that they think they can win that division this year. That they think this is like, maybe they want to get off to a great start with the new coach and Liam Cohen, the new regime under Tony Baselli with this James Gladstone. But does the Travis Hunter trade, A, getting the player, and then B, the message it sends, does that impact how you feel about the Jags win total for this year at all, Steve?
Oh, sure. I'm slightly more bullish on Jacksonville this year because, they're a better team this year with the number 2 versus the number 5 pick. It's just not significant enough to, warrant mortgaging the future. But yes, Jacksonville was sitting, I believe, at 7.5 wins, and I was looking towards the under. Now I'd be leaning towards the over.
I agree with you. I think he is that good. I agree with you. I would lean towards the over as well now. All right, like a lot of us, trying to make my meals as nutritious as possible. Big fan of Huel, latest sponsor for the show. New customers, do what I did. Visit Huel.com/even today and use my code EVEN to get 15% off your first order plus a free gift. I'm holding it right now for those of you watching us on YouTube. Fezzik, you can see he's in great shape. You know why? He knows it's about the 27 vitamins and minerals and low in sugar and one bottle containing 35 grams of protein. 35 grams. A perfectly balanced meal. Here's what it comes down to. High in protein, contains vitamin C, very convenient, cheaper than a coffee, tastes pretty good. I would not drink it if it didn't taste pretty good. Again, that's Huel.com/even to get 15% off. Hopefully you guys saw Saturday I was at Penn State's blue-white game doing what I do. Drink Labatt Blue. That rhymes. That was awesome, actually. I didn't even expect that. Anyway, I love this promotion they got going. Buy beer, get gear. It's incredible. When you buy Labatt Blue anywhere, take a picture of the receipt, upload it, rewards.labattusa.com. Then you can get incredible gear. Like I got that Labatt fridge. It is awesome. Any size, any product, anywhere you're buying Labatt, buy beer, get gear, rewards.labattusa.com. Another one that jumped out to me, 2 other ones that jump out, Steve, that I think we should talk about. The Giants, okay? They draft Jackson Dart late in the first round. Steve, we know how this goes. He's going to start a bunch of games. Unless Russell Wilson comes out and is playing at a really high level and the Giants are winning, the only way GM Joe Shane and head coach Brian Daboll can save their jobs are either they win like double-digit games to Russell Wilson, that's not happening, or they put Jackson Dart in there and he looks good and they win some games and they have momentum and the owners say, you know what? We don't want to mess this up with this young quarterback. We got a good thing going. The Giants are at 5.5. How many games would you project right now that Jackson Dart will start? And is that enough to take the under on the Giants 5.5?
I think he's only going to start 3 or 4 games. The defense might be better for the Giants. They might hang in there and play some competitive games. I can't go under 5.5, but similarly to what we're doing with Cleveland, I definitely can look at these games of the year, back end, and look to fade the Giants in December, because let's face it, we're probably going to get Dart in December, and the reason we're getting him is the Giants are already struggling, and then it's just experimentation, and we're going to get some really high point spreads at that point in time. So it's lock in some of their opponents on games of the year and get down on it before those lines inflate.
Okay, awesome. Does DraftKings have those up yet or no?
Nope.
They're going to wait till the schedule comes out.
They'll all be based upon the power rating of the team to start the year. That's what they do, is every team gets hit with the power rating, and then they go through the entire schedule. And I think you bring up a very sage point that both Cleveland and Giants, we would forecast their power ratings to drop because of a likely change to a rook quarterback later in the year.
All right, so people that don't remember, in the offseason, after the schedule comes out, Steve usually has 1 or 2 games of the week every week. He goes through week 1, week 2, etc. This is a great point, Steve. We know, I don't want to say virtual certainty, but it's highly likely these teams are going to be starting rookie quarterbacks later in the year. Now, maybe they're good. Penix was pretty good. Bo Nix was good. Maybe they're good, and maybe that we shouldn't be downgrading them, but the odds are they're probably going to be rookie quarterbacks going against better teams late in the season. Jackson Dart from Ole Miss up in New York, maybe Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, they didn't play in that colder weather either. So that's an interesting thing as well. What about the Saints? Their season win total is 6.5. There's weird stuff going on with Derek Carr. We don't have a lot of clarity there. They did take Tyler Shuck out of Louisville high in the second round. A lot of people think he's going to be their starter, maybe their week 1 starter. Steve, I'm tempted to take the under on the Saints. I know Shuck did some good things for Louisville last year, but he might be their week 1 starter, week 1. And they're at 6.5.
Boy, Ross, you're just making the Rattler family rather upset, right? Because you're throwing him completely under the bus. No, I think you nailed it. If Carr is the starting quarterback for the year, the Saints are going over 6.5. That's a great bet. If it's Tyler Shuck, they're going to be shucking the season, if you will, and the Saints are going to win 5 games. So I think we got to wait and we got to see how this Carr situation plays out, right?
So this is one where you got to have notifications on and you got to be following it, because as soon as, let's say, the Saints and Carr part ways or something happens with Carr, we got to be ready to fire on the under for the Saints, correct?
100% correct. Yes.
All right. What about the rest of were there any other teams that I missed? Anybody else I should ask you about? Those were the ones that jumped out the most to me. Was there any other team that maybe made a couple of good picks, or that you really think, hey, this guy's good enough? Maybe it's the Bears getting Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, or maybe the Raiders now that they got Geno at quarterback and Ashton Genty at running back. Was there any other team that did anything that you thought, man, this is actionable?
Well, I think the Raiders, I don't want to be a homer. I bet against the Raiders tons of times, but it sure looks like they are looking to try to win this year, right? And with having Gentry, I mean, the Raiders never they haven't had a quarterback, they haven't had a good coach, and they haven't had a running back. Certainly last year. And so I think the Raiders could be competitive and to go ahead and be able to win 8 games this year. So they will be on my list of teams I'm looking to back.
All right, what else, Steve? Right now, let's talk sports that people can bet on right now. So what jumps out to you about NBA or baseball right now?
Let's talk NBA. One thing, and this applies to NHL also, Ross, in the playoffs, I love playing games late in series, game 6s and 7s under, because the pressure builds and these teams just naturally play tighter, more close to the vest. And we're seeing some, especially with the NHL, we're seeing some high scoring games. But if we get a game 7 in the NHL, I got to tell you, playing under 6 is so good because you blink and so often these games are 1-1 in the third period. And the same thing in the NBA. You get a game 7 for all the marbles, and all of a sudden you don't see this fast and loose play. The refs oftentimes swallow their whistles. So we're not seeing that many competitive series, but I'll give you one right now. Denver, the Clippers, 2-2. It's been a fantastic series. If this goes 7, that game 7 in Denver, absolutely put me down for the under.
Ooh, like it. Do the lines not take that into account, Steve? Like, do the odds makers not take that dynamic into account?
They do. And so ideally you want to play an under in game 6 or 7 after a game goes over, because sometimes the odds makers say, oh, that total game 5 was too low. And it wouldn't be unusual that they'll deal it like a point higher the next game. They'll open it a point higher, and inevitably all the sharps pound the under. And even if after a game 5 goes over, game 6s and game 7s get dealt 2 points and 3 points lower, it's still not enough.
Vodka, in particular, Smirnoff vodka, the world's #1 vodka, an official vodka partner of the NFL, and my official vodka partner. You know why? Because it's delicious, and yet you're not paying a crazy amount. There's no reason to do that. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails that are perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. Super Bowl's over. Draft is over. Smirnoff's not over. Smirnoff's getting you ready for the next season, which will be here before you know it. Got it. Okay. Like, no matter what they do, it's still close to them. It's close enough that we can still do it.
The odds makers are too anchored to the game 4 and 5 totals, thinking, oh, well, if I dealt 218 on last game, I can't deal 213 on game 7, but they really should drop that game 7 as much as 5 points.
All right, Steve, I don't think we asked this question last week. Maybe we did. Did we ask from Gaetano? I don't think we did. Gaetano, he's Italian. He said, thank you for answering my previous question about the same game teasers. He said, I have another one for Steve. That was in October, by the way. Is it better to pay the extra 10% VIG to get your teaser below or above an integer for Wong teasers? For instance, last night, this is from the season, I teased the Texans up to +8 versus the Jets at -110 instead of +8.5 to avoid risking -120. I'm regretting the decision because the teaser pushed instead of winning. What's the best strategy in these situations and expected ROI over the long term? As a reminder, you can always email me any questions you have for Steve. Ross@rosstucker.com. Put even money question in the subject line, but you go to the top of the line if you send in a screenshot that you rated and reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts or took advantage of any of our sponsors that you hear on the show or see on the sponsor page at rosstucker.com. All right, what do you got for this guy, Steve?
So we've been talking about this, and I've been doing the analysis. Bottom line is I'm willing to pay the extra vig to get the push on the teasers. So when I'm playing a Wong teaser, let's say I've got a 7.5 point favorite, Ross, and I'm teasing it down to 1.5, okay? I am willing to go ahead and pay the extra vig and get it down, 6.5 point teaser down to -1. So if my team wins by 1, I don't lose, I now push. Same thing when I'm teasing a +1.5 up to a +7.5, I'm willing to go ahead and turn it into a 6.5 point teaser, get it up to +8 and get the push. I'm not willing to pay the extra vig and turn the push into a win because the value of getting onto the integer is significantly more than the value of going off the integer and trying to get a win. Now, this makes sense. Think about all that vig I'm paying, right? When I'm playing these teasers and I'm paying, minus, 280 per leg. So critical to not lose by a half. You want to get it onto the integer.
Wow. By the way, I haven't heard the word integer since, I don't know, 3rd grade, 5th grade. We don't talk about integer that much. So usually, Steve, this is fascinating. Usually when people ask questions like this, your answer is usually, no, it's not a good idea. No, don't pay the extra vig. No. This is one of the rare ones. How come we don't talk about this on the show more if this is a thing to do?
Well, because I'm bringing up integers, and that's like 4th grade math, right? Are you smarter than a 4th grader? So imagine like when I start talking about the vigs per leg and how I can go hyper, actuary, warning, too much math. Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it would be too much math. Looking forward to next week, man. We'll start to get close to the NFL schedule release, and we'll dive into these playoffs a little bit more. Check him out on social media at Fezzik Sports. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. The show, of course, is at Ross Tucker Pod. Good luck, everybody. Hope you guys win some money.
Thanks for tuning in to Even Money. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.